Therefore, in accordance with the signed agreement dated January 15, 2024, the aforementioned terms are legally binding on all present parties.
I knew I'd been erased the moment the metal chair screeched across the tile floor, sharp as a blade. The cafe had been rented out by the hour, tucked into the ground level of an old office building near the ferry terminal in New Orleans. The manager drew the curtains, switched on warm yellow lights, and set a long table in the middle of the room like this was a private hearing, not the final goodbye to a man who had just died. The man at the head of the table wasn't wearing a lawyer's robe. He wore a dark tie, and his hand rested on a worn brown leather briefcase, as if whatever was inside weighed more than leather and brass clasps. My mother sat to his right, spine straight, lips curved at the exact angle that reads pleasant to strangers. My father sat across from her, hands laced together, eyes fixed on the rain pooling on the window, and my sister, Madison, placed her phone face down on the table, checking it now and then like she was waiting for a congratulations text. I sat at the very end, close to the wall where the air conditioner blew straight against my neck. I'd told myself that corner would help me stay calm. Now I realized it was simply the seat meant for someone who didn't matter, someone who was there to make the paperwork feel complete. The man opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents clipped inside a gray folder. "I'm Cole," he said, voice formal, clean. "I've been asked by the family to assist in the announcement of the estate documents of Mr. Walter Harrow." Hearing my grandfather's name tightened something in my chest. He used to call me something special. He'd say I was the kid who knows how to listen. Every time he said it, I felt chosen, not by money, but by trust. And then, one day, every door between us slammed shut, and my family explained it with a sentence so simple it was cruel. He was tired. He didn't want visitors. Cole began reading. His voice stayed steady, measured, like he'd watched families fall apart over ink and signatures more times than he could count. "Liquid assets and investment accounts will be transferred to the eldest daughter and the eldest granddaughter." He paused, turned a page. "The total estimated value is $15 million. Madison didn't smile, not fully, but her shoulders loosened. My mother exhaled just slightly, like someone hearing confirmation of what she'd known all along. My father kept staring out the window, but the corner of his mouth twitched, satisfied. I waited for my name to show up at the end of a sentence, like a small comma that would keep them from pretending I never belonged. I waited for a line that said I mattered, even a little. But the pages kept moving. Another sheet slid over another, and then Cole spoke the sentence that turned the air inside my body to ice. "There is no allocation designated for Miss Lena Hart." My name was read like a technical error, not to recognize me, to announce my absence. I stared at the glass of water in front of me. Condensation gathered and ran down the sides like sweat. My hands rested on my thighs, fingers curling in, as if my body needed something solid to hold on to so I wouldn't slip out of reality. I wanted to ask right then. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to slam my palm against the table and demand an explanation. But I didn't. My family always won when I lost control. They lived for those moments. They turned me into the problem, the dramatic daughter, the ungrateful granddaughter, the jealous sister. And once that story was told, the truth would never find the door again. My mother leaned toward me and laid her hand lightly over my wrist, the kind of touch that looks tender from the outside, but the pressure felt like a clamp. "You knew," she said, voice soft as velvet. "Your grandfather didn't want you." That sentence was so familiar I could hear it echoing from childhood. Every time I asked why Madison got the bigger slice of cake, why she got to ride with Dad while I stayed home, I got the same lullaby of control. Don't think too much. Don't keep score. Don't make it a big deal. And then the final line, the one meant to shut me down completely. "You exhaust people." My father didn't look at me. "Don't turn this into drama," he said. "He decided." I swallowed a dry laugh. He decided. But when? When he used to talk to me every Sunday night? When I called and only heard a ringing until the line went dead? When I texted and got back short, clipped messages that didn't sound like him, like someone else had typed them without even using punctuation? I lifted my eyes to Cole. He didn't avoid my gaze. He looked at me like a man weighing something he wasn't ready to say out loud. I held on to that look like you hold on to a thread when everything else has been cut. "Can I ask one question?" My voice sounded strange to me, but it didn't shake. Was my grandfather in a clear state of mind when he signed this? My mother tightened her grip on my wrist, still smiling. "Lena," she said, like a warning wrapped in sugar, "what exactly are you implying? Are you saying I lied to you?" It wasn't a question. It was a trap. If I said yes, I'd be the monster. If I said no, I'd be the coward who stayed quiet because she was afraid. Cole tapped the tip of his pen against the paper. The sound was small, but it made the room go still. "This announcement has witnesses and proper documentation," he said. Then he paused and looked directly at my mother. "However, there is an additional document." It felt like the oxygen got pulled out of the room. Madison sat up straighter. My father finally turned back, eyes narrowing. My mother kept her smile, but I saw tension at the corners of her mouth, like a thread about to snap. "An additional document?" my mother repeated, her voice climbing half a note. "I was his caretaker. I would know." Cole reached into the briefcase and removed a thick envelope sealed with red wax. "By Mr. Harrell's request, this document was sealed and can only be opened when all parties are present, and specifically, it may only be opened when Miss Lena Hart is in attendance." My heart hit once hard, then slowed into something steady. Not because I suddenly believed I was about to get money, but because somewhere, somehow, someone had noticed I'd been pushed out, and they decided to leave me a door back in. My mother let out a sharp, brittle laugh, trying to turn it into nothing. "Just procedure. Open it. We have to go." I looked at my mother for the first time since I'd walked into that room. I didn't say a word, but in my head a sentence formed, clear and cold. If they've been living by telling my story for me, then today the truth is going to speak for itself. Cole placed his hand on the red seal. He said, "I'm going to begin." And right before the envelope was opened, I realized the thing that scared me most wasn't finding out what my grandfather really thought of me. The thing that scared me most was that my mother was about to find out too. Cole's thumb hovered over the red wax like he was about to press on a bruise. No one spoke. The cafe's air conditioner kicked on again, a low mechanical hum that filled the silence the way fear fills a room when everyone's pretending they're fine. My mother's hand was still on my wrist. From the outside, it probably looked like comfort, a mother steadying her daughter. But her fingers weren't gentle. They were positioned like a reminder. I can still control you. I didn't pull away, not because I couldn't, because I'd learned something over the years. If you fight them in the moment, they win twice, once when they push, and again when you react. Madison cleared her throat like she was trying to reclaim the spotlight. "This is unnecessary," she said, voice light, practiced. "If Grandpa wanted something different, he would have said it." My father finally looked at me. His expression wasn't anger. It was disappointment, the kind that always carried an unspoken accusation. "You are making us look bad." "Lena," he said, slow and firm, "whatever this is, keep it respectful." Respectful. That word had been used on me like a muzzle for most of my life. Respectful meant quiet. It meant swallowing questions. It meant smiling through the ache. Respectful meant letting them decide what was true. Cole glanced at the envelope, then up at me. "Before I proceed," he said, "I'm obligated to confirm. Miss Hart, do you wish me to open and read the sealed document?" I felt every gaze swing to my face. My mother's smile tightened, turning glossy and sharp at the edges. Madison's eyes narrowed, quick and calculating. My father's jaw clenched like he was biting down on something sour. And the strangest thing happened. Instead of fear, I felt clarity, the kind that comes when you've been drowning for so long you stop flailing and start choosing your movements. "Yes," I said, "please read it." My mother's fingers dug into my wrist, just a fraction harder, a warning. Then she released me, slow, as if she was generous enough to let go. Cole nodded once, but before he broke the seal, my mind drifted back, not to the day my grandfather died, but to the months before everything turned into this. It started with small absences. Walter Harrow had always been consistent. Sunday nights, like clockwork, he'd call. He didn't talk fast, he didn't talk long, but he talked like a man who meant what he said. He would ask about my job, what I was reading, whether I was sleeping enough. He would remind me to eat something besides vending machine dinners. And he would end every call the same way. "I'm proud of you, kid who knows how to listen." Then one Sunday, the phone didn't ring. I waited. I told myself he was tired. I told myself he fell asleep early. I told myself anything that sounded kinder than the truth. The next week, I called him. It rang and rang and rang until it clicked into voicemail. I left a message. The week after that, I tried again. Same thing. When I asked my mother, she didn't hesitate. "He's declining," she said, eyes wide with concern that never reached her voice. "He gets confused. He doesn't want to talk. It upsets him." My father chimed in like the final stamp of authority. "Let him rest. Stop pushing." I didn't believe them. Not fully. But my doubt didn't matter because they spoke with the confidence of people who controlled the narrative. So I drove to Walter's house. I still remember the smell of that front porch. Old wood, damp air, the faint sweetness of magnolias. I rang the bell and waited with my heart beating too hard, like I'd done something wrong just by showing up. My mother opened the door, wearing an apron, hair neatly pinned back, looking like she was starring in a commercial about devoted caregiving. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly, as if the question itself was polite. "I came to see him," I said. "I've been calling." She tilted her head, sadness arranged on her face. "Honey, today isn't a good day." "I don't need a good day," I said. "I need to see him." For a second, her eyes flashed, just a flicker. Then she smoothed it over. "You don't understand. He gets agitated when he's surprised. He asked me not to let people in." People, not even me, just people. I stepped forward anyway, and that's when I saw it. The chain latch hooked across the doorframe, a small piece of metal that told me everything. She wasn't protecting him from stress. She was protecting her version of reality. "I'll come back later," I said, because I didn't want to beg at my own grandfather's door. "Call first. Don't just show up." As if I was a stranger. When I got back to my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and stared at the house. I watched curtains shift in a window upstairs. I watched the light change, and I wondered if Walter was inside, wondering why I'd disappeared, or if he'd been told I didn't care enough to come. Over the next few weeks, the little details started to stack in my mind, like unpaid debts. My mother began mentioning expenses, care supplies, home repairs, a new nurse, a part-time aide. She said it with the tone of someone carrying the world on her shoulders. But when I asked for specifics, she got offended. "Do you think I'm stealing from him? After everything I do?" she'd say. "After everything I do?" My father backed her up automatically. Madison rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. But Walter had always been careful with money. He tracked things. He noticed when a charge was off by a few dollars. He once drove back to a grocery store because the cashier had accidentally rung up an extra carton of milk. He didn't do it for the money. He did it because details mattered. Then I found the bank alert. I wasn't snooping, I wasn't hacking. Walter had put me as an emergency contact years ago, back when he was still sharp and stubborn and determined to stay in control. One morning, an email landed in my inbox from a financial institution I recognized, a notification that an account I'd once helped him set up had been updated. Not a fraud alert, not a warning, an update. The name on the authorized user line had changed. I read it twice, then a third time, because my brain didn't want to accept what my gut already knew. My mother had been added. I called the bank. They wouldn't tell me anything. Privacy policy, authorization, legal procedures. I called Walter's phone again. Voicemail. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring like she'd been waiting. "Why are you on his account?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She sighed, long and patient. "Honey, because someone has to handle things. You live your life, Lena. I'm the one here doing the hard part." The hard part, her favorite phrase, the one she used to make control sound like sacrifice. I hung up without saying anything else. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to set the phone down on the kitchen counter and breathe through it. That night I opened a notebook. Nothing fancy, just paper and a pen. I wrote down dates, missed calls, the day I was turned away at the door, the bank notification. Every little thing that felt wrong but had been dismissed as me being too sensitive. I didn't know what I was building then. I just knew I was done being told my instincts were a problem. Back in the cafe, Cole's thumb pressed into the wax. It cracked with a soft snap, almost gentle. My mother flinched. It was small, barely visible, but I saw it. And that was when I knew with a certainty that settled into my bones that whatever was inside that envelope was not going to be good for the story she'd been telling. Cole slid a finger under the flap and began to open it. Madison's breath hitched. My father went perfectly still, and my mother, for the first time in my life, looked like she couldn't predict what would happen next. The paper inside the envelope wasn't yellowed or fragile. It was crisp, clean, printed on heavy stock like it had been prepared with intention. Cole slid it out slowly, as if speed would be disrespectful or dangerous. My mother leaned forward, still wearing that carefully arranged expression of patience, but I could see it now. Her eyes weren't soft, they were hunting. Cole adjusted his glasses, scanned the first lines, then cleared his throat. "This document is titled Statement of Intent and Record of Concern," he began, "dated May 12th of this year." My father cut in, voice sharp. "Just read it." Cole didn't react. He simply continued, the way people do when they know the law is finally on their side. "Dated May 12th of this year," Cole said, "signed by Walter Harrow, witnessed and notarized. It was provided to my office with explicit instructions that it remain sealed until the day of the estate announcement, and that it only be read if Miss Lena Hart was present." My name sounded different this time, not like a technical error, like a key. I felt my spine straighten, not with pride, with readiness, like my body had been waiting for this moment longer than my mind could admit. Cole read the opening paragraph. Walter's words came out in Cole's voice, but I could still hear my grandfather behind them. The phrasing was his, direct, clean, no wasted emotion, and because of that, every sentence hit harder. "I, Walter Harrow, am writing this while of sound mind and clear judgment. I am aware that there have been changes in my household and my care arrangements that I did not request and do not approve." My mother's smile didn't move, but her nostrils flared once. Cole continued, "I am also aware that certain members of my family have represented my wishes inaccurately and have restricted contact between myself and individuals I trust." Madison shifted in her seat, the chair legs scraping against tile. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else, but the words came out thin. Cole didn't even glance at her. He read on. "Lena Hart has attempted to reach me through calls and messages that were not delivered to me in full. On multiple occasions, I was told she did not call, did not visit, and did not care. This was false." The sentence landed like a slap across the table. My throat tightened, not because it surprised me, but because I'd spent months being told my own memory was wrong. Hearing Walter name the truth out loud, on paper, in front of witnesses, felt like someone finally opening a window in a room I'd been suffocating in. My mother's hand found her necklace, fingers pressing the pendant like a prayer, but her eyes stayed locked on Cole. My father's jaw flexed. He looked like he was trying to decide whether to interrupt again or pretend this wasn't happening. Cole turned a page. Due to concerns about financial management and personal autonomy, I have requested and completed an independent review of my accounts and household expenses. My mother's head snapped up. What review? She demanded, too fast, too loud. Cole paused, just long enough to let the words hang there. Then he resumed. This review indicated irregular withdrawals in charges that were not authorized by me, as well as changes to account permissions that were executed without my full understanding. Madison's face lost color. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. My father leaned back, crossing his arms like that posture could block what was being said. Cole kept reading, steady as a metronome. I do not accuse lightly. I am documenting these concerns because I have been pressured to sign papers I did not request, and because I have been discouraged from seeking outside counsel. My mother's lips parted. Her voice came out strained. Walter was confused. He didn't understand what he was signing. This is... Cole held up a hand, calm. Ma'am, please, I will read the full statement. For the first time that afternoon, my mother looked like someone had told her no and meant it. Cole continued. I have also been told that if I speak openly, I will be moved to a facility and denied the comforts of my home. I am writing this as a record, and I am placing it under seal because I do not trust certain family members to honor my wishes once I am gone. The cafe felt suddenly too small. The air conditioner's hum sounded louder. I could hear rain tapping the window like impatient fingers. My mother's cheeks flushed. She forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. That is absurd, she said. He was afraid. He was emotional. He said things. But Cole wasn't reading feelings. He was reading evidence. He turned another page. Therefore, I direct the following. 1. The distribution of certain assets as stated in my primary will remains in place for immediate transfer. 2. The remainder of my estate is to be placed in a trust with independent oversight for a period of 24 months to allow for review and resolution of concerns. 3. No member of my immediate family currently serving as caregiver shall have unilateral control over disbursements during this period. 4. Lena Hart is to be granted full access to the record of my communications, financial statements, and documented care arrangements, as she has demonstrated consistent concern and integrity. 5. Any individual found to have interfered with my communications or misrepresented my wishes is to be removed from any position of authority regarding my estate. Madison made a sound, half gasp, half laugh, like her body couldn't decide what emotion was appropriate. My father's face hardened. This is an attack, he said, voice low. This is him being manipulated. I turned to him slowly. By who? I asked. The words came out soft, almost curious, because it wasn't me. He didn't answer. He couldn't, not without admitting something. My mother's composure cracked. Lena, she said, sharp now, not sweet. You planned this. You came in here with an agenda. I felt something in me settle, a calm I hadn't expected, the kind of calm that comes when the truth finally has wheat. I planned to show up, I said. That's all. Cole's voice cut through the rising tension. There is more, he said. He lifted the final page, the page that made my mother's fingers curl tight against the table edge. Walter Harrow also included a sealed addendum containing a timeline of documented incidents and supporting records to be provided to Miss Lena Hart and to any reviewing authority if necessary. Madison's eyes flicked to my mother. My father's gaze dropped to the table. My mother stared at the document like it was a threat that had grown teeth. Cole set the pages down carefully. "Miss Hart," he said to me, "my office has the supporting materials referenced here. We can schedule an immediate meeting to review them." My mouth went dry, not because I was afraid, because for the first time I realized how deep this went. Walter hadn't just written a letter, he'd built a case. My mother pushed back from the table so abruptly her chair squealed. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, voice brittle. "We're done here." But the room didn't move with her anymore. The story had shifted. The power had shifted, and my mother could feel it slipping through her fingers like sand. I didn't stand, I didn't chase, I didn't plead. I simply looked at her and said the quietest thing I'd ever said to her that carried the most force. "Now you know." And in my mother's eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, fear. Fear looks different on different people. On my mother, it didn't show up as tears or shaking hands. It showed up as speed. The faster she moved, the more she could pretend she still controlled the room. She snapped her purse strap onto her shoulder like it was armor. "Cole," she said, crisp and loud, "you cannot just read some paranoid letter and treat it like truth. Walter was old, he was vulnerable, he was influenced. If anyone manipulated him, it was the person who wasn't even there." Her eyes cut to me, sharp enough to draw blood. My father stood too, not rushing, but rising with that slow authority he'd used my entire life. He planted himself behind my mother like a wall. "This is defamatory," he said. "We'll have our attorney contact you." Cole didn't blink. He slid the pages into a neat stack, as calm as a man folding laundry. "You're welcome to seek counsel," he replied, "but this document is properly executed, witnessed, and notarized, and it contains directives related to the estate. My role is to carry out Mr. Harrow's instructions." Madison's eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an exit that wouldn't make her look guilty. She let out a laugh that sounded too high. "So what? Lena gets to play hero now? She's barely been around." That was the old playbook. Minimize me, reframe my absence as indifference, ignore the part where they built the walls. I looked at my sister, really looked. Her mascara was perfect, her nails were perfect, but the skin around her mouth had gone tight, like she'd been biting back panic for years, and today it finally had a taste. "Barely been around?" I said, quietly. "You mean the times I called and didn't get through, or the time I showed up at the house and your mom kept the chain on the door?" My mother's head snapped toward me. "Don't you dare!" But Cole's voice cut in, firm now, not loud, just final. "Ma'am," he said, "I need to be clear about the next steps. Mr. Harrow's statement isn't simply a letter. It references supporting records already in our possession. Those records are covered under attorney-client privilege and were delivered to us under instruction. They will be released as directed." My mother's lips thinned. "What records?" Cole met her stare. "Communication logs," he said. "Email forwarding data, account access changes, copies of signed authorizations, a timeline of incidents with witnesses where applicable." The cafe went still in that way a room goes still when everyone realizes the story they've been telling themselves is about to collapse. My father's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You're accusing us of crimes," he said. "I'm reading Mr. Harrow's concerns and directives. If any legal questions arise from that, it will be handled appropriately by the parties involved." My mother's composure cracked again, and this time the sweetness didn't come back. "Lena set this up. She's been waiting for a chance to punish us because she's always been jealous." Jealous, another familiar word, the one they used when they didn't want to say hurt, when they didn't want to say neglected. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I wasn't jealous, I was confused, I was worried, and I was locked out. Madison pushed her chair back with a scrape. "This is insane," she said, but her voice wobbled. "Mom, tell them he didn't mean it." My mother turned on her instantly. "Don't you talk," she hissed under her breath, then caught herself and faced Cole again with a forced smile. "We will be disputing this. Walter was not competent." Cole nodded, like he'd heard that line 1,000 times. "Then your attorney can address the competency claim." However, Mr. Harrow anticipated that argument. He included a contemporaneous medical evaluation and a video statement recorded in the presence of an independent witness. The word video hit my mother like a shove. "What?" she said, too fast. Madison's face went blank. My father's eyes narrowed, but I saw something behind them now. Calculation, risk. Cole continued, and his voice was still professional, but it carried the faint edge of someone who hated bullies. "Mr. Harrow's instructions are as follows. Mrs. Hart is to meet with our office today, if she chooses, to review the sealed addendum and supporting materials. The trust will be established immediately. Disbursements will be frozen except for approved expenses, pending review, and any attempt to obstruct access to records will be documented." My mother's breath came shallow, quick. She stepped toward Cole, then stopped, as if she wasn't sure whether she was allowed to cross that invisible boundary between performance and consequence. "This is theft. You're stealing from my daughter." Madison flinched at the word daughter, like it reminded me I existed too. Cole folded his hands. "No, this is oversight." My father leaned in toward me then, voice low enough that Cole and Madison wouldn't catch every word. "If you take this further," he said, "you will destroy this family." I looked at him and felt something inside me finally detach, like a knot coming undone. "You destroyed it," I said. "I just stopped pretending." My mother's eyes flashed. "You ungrateful—" Cole raised his hand again, not to silence her like a child, but to mark a line. "We're done with the reading," he said. "Miss Hart, would you like to proceed to my office now?" Every part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to grab the file, to take the truth and run. But a lifetime with my family had taught me something else too. They don't stop when they're cornered. They escalate. They rewrite. They recruit. They punish in ways that don't look like punishments until you're bleeding. So I stayed calm. I breathed and let my eyes move across the table. The water glass, the damp ring it left on the wood, my mother's shaking fingers, my father's rigid jaw, Madison's pale face. Then Madison spoke, barely above a whisper. "Mom," she said, Did you really tell Grandpa I didn't call? Did you tell him Lena didn't care?" My mother whipped toward her, fury blazing. "Don't be ridiculous." Madison's voice cracked. "Because he asked me once. He asked me why Lena stopped coming, and I told him I didn't know. I told him—" She swallowed. "I told him maybe she was busy, and he looked like it hurt." My mother's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, and in that fraction I saw the truth. She hadn't expected Madison to remember anything except what benefited her. My father stepped in, firm. "Enough," he said to Madison. Then he turned to Cole. "We are leaving." My mother grabbed Madison's elbow hard and pulled her toward the door. Madison stumbled, caught herself, then looked back at me with something on her face that wasn't contempt anymore. It was doubt. My mother paused at the entrance, shoulder squared, chin up like a queen, refusing to bow. She looked at me one last time. "This isn't over," she said. I didn't flinch. "No," I replied. "It's finally starting." Cole stood and tucked the documents away. "Miss Hart," he said, "if you're ready, we can go." I rose from my chair, and the cold air that had been biting my neck all afternoon suddenly felt like relief, like clean water. Outside, the rain had slowed to a thin mist. The streetlights smeared gold across the wet pavement, and as I followed Cole out of the cafe, I realized something that made my stomach tighten all over again. If there was a video, then my grandfather had looked straight into a camera, knowing exactly what would happen after he was gone, and he'd left me more than money. He'd left me proof. Cole's office was only 3 blocks away, but the walk felt like crossing an invisible border. The air outside was damp and cool, the kind of weather that makes everything smell sharper. Wet concrete, exhaust, river wind. I kept my hands in my coat pockets so no one could see they were trembling. Not from fear, from the strange, unfamiliar feeling of being believed. Cole held the door for me and led me up a narrow stairwell into a suite that smelled faintly of paper and coffee. The waiting room was quiet, the lights soft, no courtroom drama, no gavel, just the hum of a printer somewhere in the back and the steady presence of a man who didn't flinch when my family tried to rewrite reality. He offered me water. I took it. My throat was dry enough to hurt. "I want to be clear," Cole said as he sat across from me, sliding a file onto the table. "This isn't about revenge. It's about following Mr. Harrow's directives and protecting the integrity of his estate." I stared at the file. It was thick, too thick to be a single misunderstanding. "I don't want revenge," I said, and the truth of it surprised me. "I want my life back." Cole nodded once, like he understood that sentence more deeply than the words. He opened the file and turned it toward me. On top was a timeline. Dates, times, names, short descriptions, the kind of document you build when you've been watching the same pattern repeat and you finally decide you're not going to die without naming it. May 3rd. Outgoing calls from Walter's phone rerouted. May 6th. Scheduled visit canceled by caregiver. Reason given: fatigue. May 8th. Bank authorization updated. New user added. May 9th. Email forwarding rule created. Messages from Lena filtered. May 12th. Independent medical evaluation confirming capacity. May 13th. Video statement recorded. Sealed. My stomach tightened at the line about email forwarding. I'd suspected it, but seeing it, written, proved, felt like stepping on solid ground after months of being told the floor was in my head. Cole flipped to the next section. Screenshots, printouts, a log of missed calls that matched my phone records, a copy of a form my grandfather had signed granting my mother limited authority. Limited, followed by a second form, filed weeks later, expanding that authority far beyond what he'd intended. Notes from a financial advisor who'd met with Walter privately. And then a short statement from a home health aide. She said to tell him his granddaughter didn't call anymore. She said it was better that way. My fingers tightened around the water glass. So it wasn't just neglect. It was a campaign. Cole paused, watching my face carefully. "Do you want to take a break?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "Show me everything." He slid a flash drive across the table. "This contains the video statement. You can watch it here, or you can take it and view it privately. Per the instructions, it's yours." My heart thumped once, hard. The idea of seeing Walter alive on screen, knowing it would be his last message, felt like a door I wasn't sure I could open without collapsing. But I'd come too far to protect myself from truth. "Here," I said. Cole set up a laptop, plugged in the drive, and turned the screen toward me. The video loaded. Walter appeared sitting in his favorite chair, the one by the window with the frayed armrest he refused to replace. The light behind him was afternoon gold. He looked thinner than I remembered, older, but his eyes were clear, steady. Him. He looked into the camera for a long moment, like he was gathering the weight of what he was about to say. "Lena, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and it means they told their story first." My breath hitched. Walter leaned forward slightly. You didn't abandon me. They tried to make me believe that. They tried hard, but I've known you your whole life, kid. You don't disappear without a reason. Tears burned behind my eyes, hot and immediate. I blinked them back because I wanted to see every second of him. He continued, I'm recording this because I don't trust what will be said after I'm not here to correct it. I've been pressured. I've been isolated. I've been lied to. And the worst part is they smile while they do it. I heard my mother's voice in my head, soft, loving, poisonous. Walter's jaw clenched as if remembering it made his mouth taste bitter. I'm leaving money the way I'm leaving it for a reason, he said. Some of it is immediate. Some of it is protected. If you're reading the statement, you already know that. He paused and his expression softened. This isn't about punishing them, he said. It's about stopping them. They treat people like property. They treat love like leverage, and I won't let them do that with my name on it. Then he said the sentence that cracked something in me wide open. I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner. I covered my mouth with my hand, not to hide the tears, but to keep the sound from escaping me, because the sob that wanted to come out wasn't pretty. It was old. It had been waiting. Walter looked into the camera like he could see through time. You're going to feel guilty, he said. They'll push that guilt into you like they always have. Don't let them. You didn't cause this. You didn't start this. And you don't owe them your silence. The video ended with him lifting his hand slightly, a gesture that felt like a blessing and a goodbye at the same time. The screen went black. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My chest hurt like I'd been running. Cole didn't speak. He didn't offer platitudes. He just sat there, giving my grief space to exist without someone trying to manage it. When I finally inhaled, it felt like the first full breath I'd taken in months. What happens now? I asked, voice raw. Cole slid another document toward me. Per Mr. Harrell's directives, the trust is established today. Disbursements are limited to verified care expenses and existing obligations. Your mother and father no longer have unilateral authority. The review begins immediately. And my mother? I asked. Cole didn't sugarcoat. If the review substantiates interference and financial irregularities, there may be civil consequences, potentially criminal depending on findings. At minimum, they will be removed from any position of control over the estate. Control. That was what they'd really been fighting for all along. Not love, not family. Control. I nodded slowly. I want access to every record, I said, and I want to make sure no one else gets locked out the way I did. Cole's expression softened, just a fraction. That can be arranged. When I left his office, the rain had stopped completely. The street smelled clean, like the city had been rinsed. I stood on the sidewalk and watched cars pass, headlights reflecting off the wet road. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my mother. You did this. You humiliated us. Don't come crying when you're alone. I stared at the screen, and for the first time, the words didn't hook into me. They didn't pull me under. They felt like the final desperate tug of someone losing their grip. I typed one sentence. I'm not alone. I'm finally free. Then I blocked her number. I blocked my father's, too. Madison's, I hesitated, not because she deserved my mercy, but because I could still hear her voice in the cafe, cracked with doubt, asking questions she'd never dared ask before. I didn't block her. Not yet. Instead, I turned the phone off and slipped it back into my pocket. I looked up at the sky, a pale strip between buildings, and felt something steady settle inside me. Walter didn't give me a fortune. He gave me the truth, documented and sealed. He gave me a way out. And that was worth more than any inheritance my family could ever wave in my face. If you've ever been the one they blame because you won't play your assigned role, if you've ever been told you're too much for asking basic questions, tell me in the comments. Hit like if you've ever had to choose yourself over a toxic family story, and subscribe to Still Waters Payback for more real, unforgettable stories where quiet people finally get their justice.